Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us. If you are just tuning in, this is our episode 6 of our Spring Spotlight Teacher Thursday series. So, we are very fortunate to be hearing from some of our educators and some of our volunteers during quarantine to hear a bit about the inside perspective of what it means to be involved with programs through the Illinois Science and Technology Institute. Today, I am very excited to welcome Mike Heinz. Mike has been a partner with us for several years now. And to kick it off, Mike, I would love if you could just tell us a bit about your path to becoming the Science Department Chair at Downers Grove North.
Well, it's been kind of a journey. I've been at 5 different school districts around the Chicago suburbs, and that's really been life choices as opposed to me not being able to hold a job. I started out in 218 at Shepherd High School out of college with chemistry, teaching chemistry. From there, we built a house out in Plainfield, Illinois. I taught at Plainfield High School for 2 years. After that, I was able to teach AP chemistry at Glenbard South High School out of the western suburbs in Glen Ellen. From there, I knew there was research opportunities with kids at Niles West High School up in Skokie, so I was at Niles West for 6 years. And then when I started teaching up at in Skokie, our family moved to Downers Grove because my wife had a job in Downers Grove. And so even before I started teaching at Downers Grove North High School, we moved to Downers Grove, and I thought, well, I knew someday I would want to lead a science department, and why not, a mile and a half away from your house as opposed to 25 miles. So that's when I applied and was given the opportunity to lead science at Downers Grove North High School. And that was in 2011.
You've been there ever since. I feel like I just got a good little geographic tour of some of the high schools in Illinois. We work with Glenbard, we've worked with Niles in the past, and it's great to kind of get their names out there as well in this.
What's nice is at each of those locations, teachers are the best thieves, and I've been very fortunate to be with true professionals around each of those organizations, and so I've stolen, really everything I can that has helped make me a better teacher and a better leader from what I've been fortunate enough to work with.
Absolutely. Education is collaborative. I think that's one of those lessons we learn every year in our programs as well. Speaking of teaching, what do you think is your favorite topic to teach and why?
This is interesting because I went to college as a biology major and got a chemistry minor. When I was finishing up my 4-year degree, I was able to student teach at Quincy High School down in Quincy, Illinois. And after my student teaching was over, a lady went on maternity leave in chemistry. And she did all of the planning and all of the grading, and all I got to do was go in and present chemistry material, and I fell in love with it. So chemistry has been my passion for the 29 years I've taught, and the reason I love chemistry is usually we get sophomores that come in, 10th graders, and I tell them, they up until this point in time they've been working with tangible things, plants, roots, stems, animals, and chemistry is the first time that they really have a chance to take the abstract world of atoms and molecules and predict and explain it in real practical terms. And so I love seeing the kids wrestle with chemistry topics, but wrestle enough that it's able to solve it. And the math with the chemistry that we teach isn't too terrible. It's just algebra and it's ratios. So they just have success with it. And that's, a teenager's mind is a terrible thing not to mess with, and chemistry will do that to them. So that's right. And we get to blow things up every once in a while. So who doesn't love to do that for a career?
Absolutely. I think that chemistry is a great example of a way to break down that math anxiety, which is kind of what you were touching on. I remember being very insecure in my math abilities, but chemistry, because it had those really involved labs, hooked me in that way too. And I think that's a great thing to see in students.
I've also had a couple of opportunities that I got to teach teachers in the summer for 4 years how to do labs, demos, and activities around the country with a lady from Atlanta, Penny Sconzo was her name, and a guy by the name of Jeff Hepburn out of Iowa. And they were veteran chemistry teachers. So I thought I was a pretty good chemistry teacher until I met them. And so then they helped me become even better. And that really solidified my love for chemistry. And for
teachers are the best thieves. Yeah. Well, as a department head, you support both students and teachers. Speaking of, what have you learned since being in this leadership role?
Patience. With any job that you have a goal for yourself and the organization that you lead. And you come in, and me, I don't sit still very much. I want to make things happen, and I want to make things happen yesterday. And getting into the department chair role I had a vision, but I had to realize that my vision for Downers Grove North Science Department had to fit in with all the other departments that I work with, and there's a network, right? Kids have experience across the board, and with my fervor for bringing science education forward, the leaders that I've had, my principals, my assistant principals, my superintendents, have cautioned me to move fast enough to get things done, but yet take that time to build it so that it's sustainable. And
Mhm.
that's why I'm proud of being involved with the Illinois the ISTC. Is it's been sustainable over the years that we've been working at it with the school. So
Yeah.
I think patience is the big one.
Which is a good lesson across the board, I think, especially in the historical moment that we're living in. We're all kind of practicing patience. You spoke a little bit about the fervor you have for science education, and that's something that we at ISTI have absolutely witnessed in you over our years partnering. Especially, you have this passion for STEM education, helping students make connections beyond the classroom, and we're happy to be able to facilitate that a bit for you as well. How did that specific passion begin, and why do you think it's important for students to have those opportunities beyond the typical classroom?
I always go back to well, I had a seventh grade teacher that had animals in the classroom, and she let us take those animals home, whether it was the weekend, whether it was the summer. It was a gerbil, an iguana, guinea pig, things like that. And she helped us see the world around us differently. And then when I got to high school, my freshman year, I went to a parochial school, and don't tell the world language teachers this, but I've never taken a world language class in my life.
Shocking.
I know, and now I wish I would have. Now that's one of the biggest regrets in life. And and so my freshman year, I took a class called Industrial Technology. Now, this was our high school was 200 people. That was it. That was in all the classes.
Wow.
And we had an industrial technology teacher, Mr. Welty, that he taught us how to take lawnmowers apart. He taught us how to build cars. He got me involved in a windmill contest. And so I built a windmill from scratch and designed it, from drawing it to, seeing it from there to plans. And I thought it was fascinating. I've always loved working with my hands. My dad was a tradesman. He was an old German tile layer. And he didn't have more than a high school education, but he could engineer and construct anything. Like he could tinker and build. And I didn't listen to much of what he said, but I watched, how he worked and how he treated people. So that was beneficial to me. In college, I was very fortunate. In the summertime, I was down in the Quincy area, and down along the Mississippi River, there was a metal fabrication company down there, and they were looking for an engineering major to come help out in the shops down there. But they got me instead. So I was cleanup boy at a metal fabrication shop, but I watched those designers. This was before computers, like the high tech computers. They had some, but I watched a guy draw on a piece of paper a dredger for the Mississippi River, and then I saw him build it piece by piece. And the next summer I went back. There was on the 50-ton crane in the garage. There was a dredger. It looked like a turbine for a jet engine, and he had designed it from beginning to end, and they took it out to the Mississippi River. And so, I've always had that fascination for how things are made, put together, and work.
I know often in engineering they call that cradle to grave, and the first time I saw something like that, like an idea become a reality, it really stuck with me as well. That's so cool. How do you foster that creativity as a teacher and as a department lead within those students?
Um, I go back to the idea that there's an innate curiosity among human beings, and sometimes as kids, in early elementary school, kids are asking questions all the time, right? So, but then as they move to the later elementary into middle school, some of that curiosity is lost because we're so focused on the doing school, that I think the idea of letting kids play, giving them toys, giving them manipulatives, letting them design, letting them fail, it's really what I try to do in my classroom, as well as you know, I run a summer camp for kids, chemistry camp, and that's fifth and sixth graders. And when you make ice cream, or you make a hovercraft out of a balloon and a CD, and you just see the joy the kids have in their faces. And then I invite the parents in to watch the kids do that. And that's what kills me about this time right now is that the hands-on building, and how do we get that back to kids? As far as leading it among teachers, I go with the green eggs and ham approach. You can't force a teacher to do anything, but you just put them in opportunities to want to do that and see how good it is. So it's like, how about now? How about now? How about now? And you just, what do you think about this? And teachers see the benefit of this for students, and I think that's the best way to get buy-in. Because then it's not me as a leader saying you have to do this. It's just like, hey, here are opportunities. And I'm very lucky with the people that I get to lead at Downers Grove North. They see that anyway. They have the ability to lead and understand what research looks like. So yeah, my job's pretty easy in that regard.
I like that green eggs and ham approach. I think that we'll have to trademark that for you. I think that's very clever. I also
sorry, it works well with administration too. Can I do this now? Can I do this now? Can I do this? So
circling back, yeah. I also agree 100% with what you're saying about tactile learning, and I think that it's something that is suffering right now in the e-learning environment and is kind of worth its own shout out, just as maybe our viewers are thinking through what it means to be in a classroom right now, what it means to be a student, and what that e-learning transition actually looks like. There's a lot of the tactile piece that students are lacking, and there are a lot of very innovative teachers and department leads like yourself who are thinking about that, factoring that in, and kind of figuring out the next e-learning move. So I guess what I'm trying to say is teachers are the best, and we appreciate you all.
It's been okay in this Band-Aid that we put on learning for this spring. We have to figure what does it look like differently next fall. At least we've got some time to plan and prepare. But
yes,
with the simulations that are out there, with some of the sites we have, we'll figure it out. We have a superintendent. His phrase is do the next right thing, do the next best thing, and that's really where we're at right now. Is do what's best right now. So.
And one of those COVID silver linings, which I personally am always kind of looking out for about e-learning right now, is we do have this summer break where our educators are going to be able to prepare, and hopefully, we'll all see each other in person in the fall. But it's good to have the time to plan this time.
For sure.
Pivoting back to the external classroom environment that you advocate for your students, when we were kind of doing our homework on you for this interview, we noticed that you participated in the 2019 MIT Science and Engineering Program for Teachers. Can you speak a little bit about what that was like and why it's important for educators to be continuous learners, trying new techniques, and taking opportunities outside of the classroom?
In that regard, I always use the phrase, if you're the smartest one in the room, you better expand your room, right? I never thought I was the smartest one ever. And I just try to grab as many experiences as I possibly can. I didn't even know about this program. It's called SEP, the Science and Engineering Program for Teachers. And I was fortunate enough to go to the 30th anniversary of it last year. And they had 50 teachers from around the globe. So you apply, you get accepted. And what it is, it's a morning of 1 hour long sessions where you get you hear presentations from some of the best people in the world, the best researchers, because MIT, that area out there is just fantastic in that regard. And then in the afternoon, you do a deep dive, and we had one of three choices that we could choose for our deep dive in the afternoon, where you break out into a smaller group and then really dig into a topic. One of the topics was gaming this past year for gaming for learning, and one was I can't remember the third, but the one I chose was equity, how to increase equity and inclusion in STEM education, and it was absolutely fascinating. We had people from Argentina and Brazil and Germany and Los Angeles, New York, Georgia, Texas, and there were times when we started talking about equity, we got in, we talked for hours, but there were tears, there was anger, and it was. People were fighting through their own ideas, and the one that it centered around was, genders. And, without getting too political, we really had some knockdown, drag out conversations that moved people, because you could. It was safe to have that kind of. But really, what it was about was how do we increase or allow STEM education to be utilized as kind of an equalizer with the gap in learning. And I've kept up and in touch with almost all those people that we were in that with, just to see what they're doing. At Downers Grove and D99, we have been working on equity and inclusion now for about 4 years, and that's in staff, and it's really starting to pay dividends for kids across the board.
Good. I think that movement in education and that movement in the broader world right now is so important, as we all know. And I think it's also a bit of the other side of teachers are the best thieves, which we were throwing out earlier. I think teachers are so good at collaborative learning and kind of stealing different lesson plans or curriculum pieces from other people. But the other side of that is obviously listening, and those big environments like the MIT experience that you're shouting out allow educators to gather and learn from one another and listen. So it's great to hear that those conversations kind of continue to inspire your work at DGN.
I did. I got to meet with. I got to meet with the guy who actually started the program there, and he was trying to help us figure out a way to start to fund STEM programs across the country. So I've been in constant communication with him over the years of how we could make that happen to a greater degree. And his idea, my thought was to have teachers out to MIT to do like STEM workshops, but they're not a teacher. They're not an education platform at MIT. Um,
Mhm.
but he wanted to reach out to industry and see how industry, like you guys are doing. And so that's why I really like. I think public schools can't do this on their own. They need this public-private partnership, and that's one of the big components to making sure that it's sustainable and successful for schools, and especially on the other side of whatever we're about to delve back into. Like business is going to need us, and we're going to need business moving forward. So that's a big bonus also of a place like MIT and the MME and the coalition that you guys have put together.
Absolutely, and it speaks to the community piece of education. Kind of the larger your lens, the more partners you can pull on, the more input you get, and the more resources you can receive. If that makes sense. Pivoting a bit back towards ISTI, you have been partnered with us for several years now. And when you started working with ISTI, your STEM programming, the STEM program at DGN, was really just getting off the ground. And it's made significant strides since then. And one of the great parts of our job is kind of watching that growth. Talk us through the journey and how you decided what to focus on when building out that STEM department.
So I think, and I've given this advice to anybody who's getting started out, is start small and successful, right? Like success breeds success. So when we first started, my thought was to get pockets of students, whether it's in a classroom or in a co-curricular club, um, doing research and having a mentor. And so we started very small with a few kids in our, we had it's called Research Topics in Earth Science. We started there because it's more of a generalized class where they are doing, and at first it was literature research, and then it got into really the deep research of having them do that. Um, and then we made it part of our AP Environmental Science curriculum because I have just a couple of fantastic. Jackie Weissar was involved with it, and a teacher by the name of Steve Ruffalo. And Steve Ruffalo was actually in on the designing of the STEM challenge question. And while at first it was energy, he actually tweaked it a little bit and made it more like very specific water-based conservation and how we can better use water, how we can better use energy in the community. And the idea that he came up with in conjunction with, it was ComEd at the time, was our corporate sponsor, and Illinois State University. It was letting the kids define what that community was. Maybe the community was your house. Maybe the community was school. Maybe the community was Downers Grove, and come up with a plan to conserve energy. We had some students one time, I remember, they wanted to put solar panels on top of buses. And that was a research project. And how fascinating is that? That buses then, if in case of an emergency, they could have chargers on them, so they had batteries. So if they charged up the batteries when they were just sitting in the bus barns, if you have a disaster, then you drive the bus out there. Now you've got rolling electricity. So at least we get kids moving in that direction. Our program has ebbed and flowed. So there are times when it's robust, and we've got 40 different projects going in 3 AP Environmental Science classes. This year we had one class of Research Topics in Earth Science, and we didn't do the STEM challenge, but we were doing the mentor matching engine. So as far as going back to being patient, you're going to have that in any kind of program. There is that, I think that growth factor. And so we've allowed the mentor matching engine to work what's best for our teachers and our kids at that point in time.
Yeah, I wanted to shout out Steve Ruffalo because he really practices what he preaches with the energy stuff. I know that his house is kind of set up in like a solar efficiency way as well. So he is a great teacher at DGN, and I think you did a great job explaining kind of. Oftentimes when we explain our educational initiatives to people, the teacher role is clear, but the department chair role, or kind of how the school might more largely support the teachers, is unclear. And I think the way DGN has modeled it has just been excellent for us.
And we've had really good support from our administration. I look at myself as being the program manager, and and communications person. So I'm a liaison between the administration and the teacher. The teachers are the ones on the front lines. They're doing the heavy lifting with the kids and holding kids accountable for deadlines, and patting them on the back when they need to, and giving them a boost when they need to do that as well. So I will say in terms of the maturity of the program, um, in terms of the maturity, sorry,
All good. This is part of the working from
online,
home experience.
um, in terms of the maturity of the program, where was I going with that? That ISTI's communication has become that much better, right? Like they know how to get kids to meet deadlines now in a way that's productive, respectful, but still gets the product done, right? So that has evolved over the years. We didn't have that in the first couple of years, so it's kind of the teacher out there. And as the ISTI has responded to teachers' needs and students' needs, it really has been it's been extremely productive growth on both ends, I think.
Good. We love to hear that. I know I've said this a couple of years now, a couple times now rather, but we've been partnering with DGN for several years, and you've shouted out the different ways in which we have, which is great. But over those years, you've had teachers use MME, which is, again, for those listening and tuning in for the first time, that's our platform that allows students to conduct independent research with mentors virtually. You've had teachers implement a STEM challenge, which is that larger kind of community corporate partnership. You've worked with ISU and then ComEd, and you've done this in everything from AP classes to after school programs. So you've really implemented our programs in a variety of ways. What would you tell teachers who are wondering how to implement these programs in their classes? I know you said start small, kind of grow from there in terms of your school. How do you think that works for other schools in terms of what's the best fit?
I think you need to know your students. You need to know set a goal. Like, what is it you want to do? Do you want to have kids do independent research as single units, as single individuals, or do you want them working in teams as part of your curriculum? And so I think that's you have to parse that out, right? Like you have to decide, is this something that's going to be a standalone for this individual student, or is this part of moving concepts forward in a class? And once you start to flush that out, then you lay a plan that gets you to the steps to achieve that goal. That's what I would recommend. And do you do it? There's almost like a branched thought process there. Do you do it in the classroom, or do you do it extracurricular? Do you do it as a standalone? Do you do it as part of your curricular area? And that you allow yourself to have that change over time too. So Steve Ruffalo, as great as he is, at some point in time, he's like, this is just hurting me on my AP Environmental Science curriculum. The first year he tried it in AP Environmental Science, it took away a little bit from what he was able to tend to it. And I'm not going to shy away from that in terms of AP Environmental Science. When they redesigned it the second year, then they made it a better fit. They made it merge. So he was almost doing double work to keep the kids up with AP Environmental Science and doing the STEM challenge at the same time. But to his credit and to ISTI's credit, they were able to listen to each other and create something to move forward. So that's the thought process you go through. I've had several department chairs get in touch with me and say, hey, how do we do this? What's this look like? What's the benefit for kids? What's the time factor? And it's work. I'm not going to shy away from that either. Like it's some heavy lifting at times.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And that's something that we tell new teachers when they're looking to sign on. There's a buy-in from teachers, but I think that buy-in from your level as a department chair influences the buy-in from the teachers, influences the buy-in from the students, and just kind of makes it a larger, more successful route for everyone involved.
I think another thing that popped into my mind here is when we were processing this with our district, and going back to the green eggs and ham, a lot of people think STEM is a thing, that it's a curriculum, that it's something that you buy, you plop it in, and it replaces something else. And the message that I keep trying to get out there is that STEM is just a way to do science and engineering, right? It's what we do. And so sometimes it's not just changing all your content, it's just changing your practices to make sure that you meet those engineering requirements, or you set kids up for those challenges that involve design thinking. And so, it's not a replacement, it's not a package deal. And that allows you the openness to design it the way you want to for what's best for your community and the learners in front of you. That's my 2 cents worth on it.
No, absolutely. And I think that something that I've learned in this role is how truly interdisciplinary STEM is, and the ways that in which STEM can pop up in courses that you might not expected, courses that aren't strictly science, tech, engineering, math themselves. So I think that's always a point worth reiterating. In terms of kind of wrapping up here, we'd love to hear about maybe a favorite memory or takeaway from working with ISTI. Again, you've worked with several of our programs with several partners, so I know you've shouted out a couple of things along the way. I, for one, loved the project with the students who had the solar panel on buses. I remember it very specifically, but I would love to hear kind of what that takeaway is for you.
A favorite memory with the ISTI?
Absolutely.
One of the most ulcer-causing situations. We had the year we had young ladies get chosen to go present down at the merchandise mart at your it was, what was it down there? Who was
Motorola Solutions, I believe.
Yeah, Motorola Solutions. Thank you. But in the process of that, we had been somebody from Fox News had reached out to us. They had heard of the STEM Challenge through you guys, I would expect, and they wanted our students to go live on Fox News in the morning in Chicago, Corey McFerrin, and it was. We left Downers Grove about 6 o'clock in the morning. We were supposed to be live on the news at 7:45, and at 7:30 in the morning, we were still on the Eisenhower Expressway with our girls and their project. So
Oh, no.
I'm on the phone with the producer, and we're going down there, and our girls had done storage batteries for like that you would put out in your home, where any extra electricity that during downtimes could be stored and then used later, during high peak times. And they had built a model for it with LED lights and so forth. So they're carrying down there. We ended up pulling up to Fox at about, because we were supposed to be on 7:45. Between 7:35 and 7:40, we parked the van right next to the plaza because we were outside. The girls jumped off the bus. They ran up there. They put mics on them, got them on the camera, and they didn't miss a beat. The girls just got on and just did a fantastic job. So that's one of my favorite ISTI memories. And we were just so proud of the girls, not only for that presentation, but what they did that day. So
Yeah.
we have a Women in STEM club at Downers Grove North that's been big, that we've used the mentor matching engine in the STEM challenge over the years too. We have about 25 to 30 girls come every week, every other week to meetings about. So that was our group of women in STEM that year.
I love that they got that additional coverage and those communication skills that mean you're able to present on stage at our showcase. And I love that you gave me the opportunity to shout out Motorola Solutions, who is a phenomenal partner to us. But in addition to being able to have that opportunity, the communication skills it takes to go live on TV at 7:45 in the morning when you're running out of a van at 7:40, that's astounding. Thank you for sharing that.
That was a
The flip side of that, I wanted to ask you, what do you hope that teachers implementing ISTI programs are taking away from this experience?
What I've found is that certainly you have a targeted approach with your STEM challenge and your mentor matching engine, but that makes a teacher that much better in what I would call day-to-day routine teaching, right? Like anytime you get a kid, and teachers oftentimes are the ones that ask the most questions, but really the goal should be to get the kids asking their questions. And so any opportunity that you do that with a targeted approach like a STEM challenge or mentor matching engine is going to have a ripple effect for that teacher's practice in their classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as we watch teachers and as we try to coach newer teachers to get to that level of students asking questions, it just pays dividends that way, whether it's a new teacher or even a veteran teacher. It makes them better being involved with the process. So
good. That's what we hope as well, that it becomes kind of a larger teaching practice and that there are other lessons to be taken away. And that, again, speaks to, I think, the interdisciplinary nature of STEM and the way that all of these lessons can kind of tie together. The other side of this equation is always our students. So as a final note, I'd love to hear what you hope students gain from these experiences.
You sent me the question ahead of time. So as I thought about this, I want them to get a job, right? And that's, people think that that's short-sighted, but we talk about, they want the skills, they want the learning, but we need in America right now, we need people that are problem solvers. We need people that are designers. We need to keep that intellectual level up. And so giving kids rigorous challenges and allowing them to fail. I'm not going to take credit for this, but somebody I was working with at one point in time said, get them to fail earlier, right? Get them to fail better. Because that overcoming those obstacles is going to pay dividends for them in the long run. But we need people that can go out and design and develop and create and innovate and persevere. right? Like the idea that, well, I'm going to go into engineering. Do you want to suffer for quite a few years because that's what's going to happen, right? You know, but we need that to bring that back to our society and build those innovators and creators here. You know, at case in point with what's going on in society today. You know, they need to understand data and analysis and science and statistics, right? So that's my goal. Get them a job and let them be difference makers.
Failing fast. I think it's important and worth restating. There's a study that I'll reference quickly before we sign off here that ISDI cites a lot that I believe was originally done by Forbes that talks about those workforce skills. And as much as, you know, data collection and those kind of strict STEM skills are a part of the equation, those other sides that you're talking about here, the problem solving, the teamwork, the communication, those are huge workforce skills and they deserve to be underlined. So thank you for shouting those out. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Mike, so much for your time today. We were thrilled to have you. If you have a question for Mike, please feel free to throw it in the comments below this video, and we look forward to connecting with you soon, hopefully in person.
I hope so. Tune in later.
Have a good day, Mike.
Thank you, Sarah.